A lot of people can take credit for bringing Peter Gourevitch to UCSD, but none more so than fellow professors Susan Shirk and Sam Popkin. Gourevitch moved into the married couple's apartment in Boston when they moved to La Jolla.
We were among the first faculty here. And a few years after we were here and Peter went to McGill, then we managed to recruit him to UCSD in the early days of the political science department.
Gourevitch's expertise in Western Europe and international political economy had its roots in his family history. One grandfather was killed in 1936 during the Stalinist purges. Other family members were killed by the Nazis. His mother was born in Odessa and fled with her family first to Berlin, then to Paris, then, after Hitler invaded France in 1940, to New York, where she met and married his father and where Peter was born. Gourevitch majored in political science at Oberlin College. He earned his Ph.D. from Harvard in 1969 and went on to teach there until '74. After 5 years at McGill University, he joined UCSD's political science department in 1979. It wasn't long after that, recalls former Chancellor Dick Atkinson, that Gourevitch was selected to chair the committee that proposed a graduate school of international relations at UCSD.
Peter was the choice, and there was never any question that he had the intellectual brilliance and the vision to conceive of what such a school would look like.
Peter Gourevitch was the fountainhead of knowledge, and there was no one else, literally no one else, who could do that job, and he did it marvelously.
It wasn't the best of times to get funding for a new graduate school of international relations and Pacific Studies, IRPS.
But you have to remember, this is the early 1980s. The university is in really tough times financially. We think these are tough times. Well, those were very tough times too.
His most famous book is Politics in Hard Times, which maybe he should reissue right now, because it's all about what happens to countries and their political systems during a global downturn like the Great Depression and maybe like the Great Recession.
Gourevitch's book is still in print after 20 years, translated most recently into Chinese. As an expert on Latin America, Drake immediately cottoned to the vision of a new school.
When Peter told me they were going to create a whole new school of international relations focused on the Pacific Rim, meaning East Asia and Latin America, and would I like to help out, I thought I died and gone to heaven, and I realized I had come to the right place. I'd made the right decision by coming to a young and growing university that was willing to try bold new ideas.
He did a great job of selling people on the future of the school, bringing them here, and from the beginning, the faculty that was put together was truly outstanding.
Paul Drake calls Gourevitch an intellectual's intellectual who brought together 3 strains of research that were normally not integrated.
Cutting-edge research in the social sciences, really comparative work in area studies, and finally work that was policy related and applicable to the real world.
That integrative approach allowed Gourevitch to lure one of the world's top experts on Japan and the other Pacific economies, Lawrence Krauss.
This was my field, the economics of the Pacific, and Peter convinced me that this was what was going to be focused upon.
Although himself an expert on Western Europe, Gourevitch quickly became conversant in Pacific studies, and his work influenced the way that the Asia hands in the school viewed the world.
His ideas had a big impact on me when I was starting to study China's economic reforms, because my earliest work, I started thinking, as Peter did, about coalitions, which sectors, which interest groups, economic interest groups, would have an interest in maintaining the wall between China and the international economy, which ones would have an interest in opening up. I talked about the Communist Coalition and the Reform Coalition, and that framework was very much influenced by Peter's work.
In IRPS, Gourevitch brought under one roof experts from business and public policy, area studies programs, economics, and political science, and encouraged them to work across disciplines.
While he was taking a political science approach, he was approaching questions that economists were trying to deal with, and economists finally recognized they didn't have all the answers, that rational thinking didn't get you to explanation of history.
While pitching the new school to UC Regents, Gourevitch recruited key members of the San Diego business community. Nick Binkley was a banker with Security Pacific.
He approached me to consult him on an idea, the creation of an international relations school with a focus on the Pacific Rim. I asked Peter, how can I help? And he said, why don't you get a letter from the chairman of the board of Security Pacific Corporation to the UC Board of Regents backing the idea of this international relations school at UCSD.
Binkley went on to serve on IRPS's International Advisory Board for 20 years. In that time, the school's reputation soared.
It is now rated one of the top 10 schools, not just in the United States, but in the world.
Peter is an absolutely wonderful human being. He was a wonderful husband. He's been a great father to his children, and he's been a superb academic leader for this campus and the university, and this greater community is much indebted to his contributions.
Peter is indefatigable. And
Paul Drake calls Gourevitch a selfless citizen with unparalleled imagination, integrity, and ethics that have not just benefited IRPS,
but also in the political science department, also in the social sciences in general. He did it to help found the Preuss School. He's done it for UCSD over and over again. He's one of the pillars of the university.
He's such a public-spirited person that all of that energy and those leadership abilities he's really put to the public goods of the university, and I'm sure he'll continue to do that.
Hello, welcome to The Body Politic. I'm Peter Gourevitch, Professor of Political Science at UCSD's Graduate School of International Relations and Pacific Studies.
After an initial run in the early 1990s, Gourevitch has resumed hosting The Body Politic, an interview and discussion format program that airs on UCSD TV. He also continues one of his passions outside of work, singing and opera.
He has a wonderful, powerful voice and projects very well, and he loves to sing and he loves opera. I have great memories of Peter's voice because at the time he had no time to sing in a chorus or anything like that. He was raising young children and very busy, but he was always singing.
I suspect that when my father's 90 years old, he'll be doing just about the same thing he's doing now, which I guess would mean screaming at televisions and singing opera in the car.
Older son Alex became a professor of political science.
I guess I became interested in politics because I wanted to be able, to win an argument with him. And I think I can say now that, Dad, I'm ready for you.
Younger son Nick is also in the family business, sort of.
So unlike my brother, who went into academia and became a political science professor, my apple has fallen much farther from the tree.
He works for a political consulting firm as a pollster for Democratic campaigns. The Peter Gourevitch Fellowship has been a major contributor to graduate scholarships at IRPS. He's also on the board of Villa Musica, a community-based organization that brings music to children and adults. And he continues to do stellar work in his own field at IRPS.
So he's a real intellectual entrepreneur.
He has a very finely tuned and educated intellect which serves him and this institution well.